After bagging a hat-trick on the weekend, Nketiah is the most bought player going into game week 11. And in this video, I'm going to reveal exactly whether he is essential for our FPL teams. And of course, revealing my game week 11 transfers off the back of a decent game week 10. So as always, if you can drop a like and smash that subscribe button, it is always appreciated. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, as always, we need to look back at game week 10 and how I got on. I wildcarded going into game week 10. I landed on this squad and thankfully I ended up getting a green arrow. I started the week around 850k and I finished game week 10 at 796,300. So not the biggest green arrow, but a green arrow nonetheless. And the squad looks quite good long term, but there's still a few question marks already in my team whether I need to address selling them or not. So we'll discuss that later on in this video. But look, just to quickly cover off how I got on in game week 10. Areola, I was expecting a clean sheet against Everton, but fair play, Everton did turn up and were the better team in that game. So I'm fine with Areola long term with those brilliant West Ham fixtures. A back three of Tsimikas, Cash and Guy. I did start Gabriel, who obviously did not play for Arsenal, and that is going to be a question mark for my team as well. Whether Gabriel is actually needed for the team, or is he going to be a rotation risk under Arteta? But nonetheless, Guy came in for his 1-pointer. I wish I did have Taylor as my first sub. Looking at the midfield, Cole Palmer was the big one that I wasn't happy with in my wildcard, and of course, he delivered a 2-pointer. I wasn't expecting much from him, and I still am already questioning whether I want him long term. So again, he could be part of a sacrifice later down the line for my transfers. But Saka, Bowen, Salah, and Son, even though a few of these didn't deliver to the heights that I was expecting, these are long-term holds for my team. Yes, Bowen could be a little bit of a downgrade later down the line if Diaby, Mitoma, these sort of players in Buemo continue to deliver for their respective teams. But while the fixtures are good for West Ham, I'm not willing to completely disregard Bowen as an FPL option just because of one bad game week. I think long term he is still a fantastic option. And the reason why I paid a little bit more for Bowen was knowing that I could downgrade to any of the options in the game. So that is a benefit when you don't have much money in the bank. But Son, Salah and Saka, good for the long term. And looking at the forwards, Watkins, I knew I was going to break him this game week, bringing him in after not owning him for so many weeks. But he was one of the highest performers for XG over game week 10, but he didn't deliver. But that isn't a problem. We know the fixtures long term are good for Aston Villa. One would question that maybe after 2 game weeks time, people will move away from Watkins, because even though the long term fixtures are good for Aston Villa, they do stumble across a few tricky ones around game week 13 and 14. So I feel like some managers may move away from Watkins, but for me, that's a problem that I'll deal with later down the line. I know Watkins is absolutely locked into my team for at least the next 2 game weeks. And I made that mistake earlier on in the season of moving away from him when the fixtures got difficult, and he continued to deliver. So maybe one that I just set and forget between now and game week 38. But one player that is going to be a set and forget is Erling Haaland with that 16-point haul. So that is how the team got on, guys. I'm really happy with how the team got on in general, even though Gabriel was a little bit of a surprise who got benched under Arteta. But what I want to quickly touch on, as I mentioned, is Nketiah. Is Nketiah actually essential for our FPL team? So let's get straight into that right now. So first up, congratulations to anybody that did take the punt on Nketiah in game week 10. Please do let me know in the comments if you're one of those FPL managers. But at 5.5 million, he is an absolute steal in that Arsenal attack. And the money fixture realistically was that game week 10 fixture at home against Sheffield United. But there's still a few fantastic fixtures coming up for Arsenal. You can see these here. Newcastle away in game week 11 doesn't feel like the right entry point at all for Nketiah. But game week 12 at home against Burnley, Brentford away, Wolves at home, Luton away. Over that spell, they are brilliant fixtures. But the big question is Nketiah actually good FPL value? And there are a few ways that we need to look at this. First and foremost, when we look at the underlying numbers, they are fantastic based on per 90 minutes. And it's also worth noting, I think the narrative under Nketiah that he hasn't played many minutes so far this season, but he's played around 600 odd minutes because obviously Gabriel Jesus is previous injury. So he's had decent game time, but he hasn't really hit the ground running this season. It's only really game week 10 where he stepped up as the forward in this team. 0.5 XG per 90 is decent reading. Shots per 90 at 3.14, exactly what we would associate with Nketiah, being very much that goal scoring forward rather than a chance creator like Gabriel Jesus is, because you can see that in the expected assist being 0.05. I compare Nketiah kind of to Callum Wilson, for example. Really, really low on chance creation, but everything does funnel through this player when he does play for their teams. And it's why Nketiah is such a fantastic FPL option, because you know he's playing on the last line of defence. And while he might not make other Arsenal players better, that's not a problem when you actually own the guy who is playing between the posts. And that is the sort of player that Nketiah is. And we saw that in game week 10. So based on underlying numbers, I'm really happy with them. I actually think they do translate well for a 5.5 million forward. The big question is game week 11 first and foremost a good entry point? And I think the answer is no. Newcastle away, probably one of the toughest fixtures that you can get on paper. And the big question mark as well, does Arteta even use Nketiah as the number 9 in this system? Or does he go for a bit more of the physical presence that Kai Havertz does offer with that aerial threat, maybe using him as a bit of an outlet in games? Because Nketiah against that Newcastle defence may struggle at times to get involved in the game. Maybe away from home, he might look to deploy Kai Havertz as a number 9. Not saying it will happen, but game week 11 just feels not the right time to buy Nketiah or to rip up your squads to do so. However, game week 12 looks like another money fixture. Comparing that to the Sheffield United game, I wouldn't be surprised if that Burnley game was another 5-0 smashing of them. So I get it. If you want to bring in Nketiah this game week, you're almost eyeing him up for game week 12 and beyond. My main worry about that is that the previous press conference from Arteta suggested that Gabriel Jesus is going to be out for a few weeks. Now, we've had game week 10. Let's say Jesus is out for game week 11. Game week 12 feels like the first sort of game week where there might be question marks about whether Gabriel Jesus returns to the squad. Now, I think Nketiah probably does play game week 12, but then after that, I think it is anybody's guess whether he does play beyond that period. So, my conclusion on Nketiah is this. I wouldn't be looking to buy him in game week 11 unless it was part of a transfer combination where you were downgrading a forward to upgrade a midfielder in your squad. Then I don't mind it, because I probably would even bench Nketiah maybe in that Newcastle fixture. But I like him for game week 12, especially if we get confirmation that Gabriel Jesus is ruled out. But my thought process is maybe rolling the transfer in game week 11 and then taking a 1 week punt on Nketiah in game week 12 if you have the luxury of 2 free transfers. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd be really interested to know if you are planning on buying Nketiah in your teams. So moving on to my game week 11 squad and how it currently looks. I have 0.2 million in the bank and 1 free transfer. And as I mentioned, for me, Nketiah isn't a planned transfer for game week 11. Like a lot of FPL managers out there, you're probably rolling with a 3-5-2 formation. So it's very difficult for you to enable Nketiah into your squad. It would mean either sacrificing someone like a Watkins, which isn't an option at all, or upgrading an Mbama or a Cameron Archer, but then you need to free up funds in order to enable that move, and I just don't really think it is worthwhile in FPL. So here is how my team is looking for game week 11. Areola in goal away against Brentford, absolutely fine with that. A back three of Shimikas, Cash and Guy. The only real deliberation I have right now is do I start Taylor or Guy in that fixture, but I'm going to lean towards the Crystal Palace defence. I just back them more, and Guy sometimes has some sort of goal threat. I know Taylor scored last week, but I'm not really anticipating either of those defenders to score anytime soon after that. Moving into the midfielders, again, they pick themselves. Palmer away against Tottenham just feels like a really bad fixture, so I'm hoping he maybe gets a penalty in that game. Saka away against Newcastle, again, not really that favourable. Bowen away against Brentford, not amazing either, but Salah away against Luton is the big money fixture. He has currently got my vice captain, but he could get the captaincy closer to the time. And Son at home against Chelsea. After seeing that Chelsea performance against Brentford, I feel a bit more confident Son is going to get some attacking returns in that game. And the two up top, Watkins away against Forest, a good fixture, and Haaland at home against Bournemouth with the captaincy. Again, I don't really think it is worth overthinking it. Yes, I could be tempted by Salah closer to the deadline with that Luton game, but after seeing what Haaland done against Man United and seeing this Bournemouth team concede week in, week out, I feel like Haaland captaincy is going to be very difficult for me moving away from. So that is how my game week 11 team is looking. I don't like some of the fixtures in this team, but I feel the benefit of rolling the transfer into game week 12 is just going to be a much better transfer strategy for my personal team. And what I want to quickly show you is how my team would look in game week 12 with my 2 free transfers. So here's how my game week 12 team is looking right now, and I would have 2 free transfers. And I always advocate FPL managers using the amazing tools available to preview how your team will look in future game weeks. I use the Fantasy Fix Plus Chrome extension, which is totally free, and it basically integrates with the official fantasy website, and you could basically just look at how your team is going to look in future game weeks. There are also other good extensions out there, but that is one of the best ones I have found. So this is how my game week 12 team would look, and remember, I would have 2 free transfers. Now, the big thing about game week 12 is that the fixtures for all the big teams are fantastic. You look at them on paper here, and it'd be very, very difficult for me to sell any player. But I always know FPL throws up curveballs, injuries, rotations, maybe even Gabriel gets benched against Newcastle and becomes a real problem in my team. And also, as I mentioned, I have never been happy with Cole Palmer in my side. He's been a good enabler, but I don't really think he offers amazing FPL value in the long term. So even though game week 12 on paper looks amazing, and I don't think I would even need a transfer in this week, that shouldn't put you off rolling your transfer in game week 11, because so much can happen over that 2-week period from now and the game week 12 deadline. And it's also worth noting, game week 13 is a really difficult game week to navigate. There are going to be really tricky fixtures for some of the top teams, so it might be worth having 2 free transfers to game week 12, using 1 to then give yourself 2 in game week 13. So really happy how my team looks for game week 12, but I know things are going to be coming up later down the line for my team. And I feel like having those 2 free transfers available to me could mean me downgrading Palmer and then upgrading a forward to a 3-4-3 formation, or even looking to free up some cash and maybe downgrade a Gabriel if we do get rotation for him once again. So let me know your thoughts, guys, but I'm really happy how the team is looking right now. Yes, guys, okay, so that's going to wrap up today's Game Week 11 transfer plans video. As I mentioned, I'm currently planning on rolling my free transfer, but it'd be really interested to know what you are planning to do. Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you can drop a like on the video and smash that subscribe button, it is always massively appreciated. And that is just going to leave me to say have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.